Hey, I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to the Township of Nipissing Committee of Adjustment. Start time 6 p.m. I'll ask first if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll look at the minutes from the last meeting. So I need a mover and a seconder. Okay, stay on that side. Councillor Butler. Councillor Kirk. So it's number COAR 2023-08, moved by Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor Kirky, that we adopt the Committee of Adjustment minutes of September 19th, 2023. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we'll move on to tonight's agenda, we'll continue tonight's agenda, let's put it that way. And this is a consent application for Murray and Sharon Becker. And the consent application proposes to sever one new lot from the subject lands for rural residential use. And what we're looking at is, and I'm sure because of the interested parties here tonight, we're looking at this subject to the following conditions. And there are a number of conditions. So to move ahead with this, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Okay, we'll go to this side. So it will be moved by Councillor Yam, seconded by Councillor Foot. Then I'll read this, and then if you have any questions, because I believe this is a very important habitat for fish, probably the most so in Nipissing Township, and we want to do it right. So they have to deposit a sketch in the land registry, the transfers. I'm going to look at, because this will all have to be read again, but I want to just go over the special schedule describing both the retained and severed lots, written confirmation from North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority, if there's sufficient and potable water supply, and to permit the installation of an adequate means of sewage, an entrance permit from the township. Any traveled roads situated on the severed or retained lot shall be transferred. Confirmation that sufficient capacity exists for treatment capacity for hauled sewage. Obtain approval of a zoning bylaw amendment application to protect the fish habitat and associated adjacent lands. I'm going to ask John Paul to explain that if anybody hasn't looked at the map and seen what we're doing here.
Well, just in that part of the day, like that's just because it's a fish habitat area in our official plan policies, that area has a lot of walleye spawning, I believe even sturgeon.
Sturgeon.
So during this lot creation, having that condition for a zoning bylaw amendment will protect that area 120 meters around fish habitat from now and into the future. Without that, we don't have a mechanism to control any development there. So that's why that condition's been added.
So if there was a concern, and I most certainly had a concern, as Dave pointed out, one of the few sturgeon spawning beds. And I mean, it's always been pickerel, but pretty a sensitive area. So that's why we brought that in. 120 meters, no development from the shoreline back 120 meters. So we're trying to be very protective. And then, of course, the last, just the appropriate form signed. So are there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
Thanks, Mayor Piper. It's not so much a question, it's just kind of a little bit of clarification. In the report, I think it's on page 5 here, where it mentions, as you indicated as well, that it's recommended that a zoning bylaw amendment be obtained to zone the known fish habitat area and the associated 120-meter adjacent lands to the EP zone, which from reading the report, that's commonly where it usually is anyway. But then at the very last number, I think it's H of the conditions, I'm just not sure where it says that the applicant, under conditions, that the applicant provides the township with, and then number H just says obtain approval. So I'm not sure if that means the approval process will go through first, if the applicant obtains it, or if the township does it.
Penelope, that they've applied for a zoning bylaw amendment. Actually, they're doing it concurrently now to do the bylaw amendment. So I can't sign off on that form until that zoning bylaw amendment's been passed. So a good question.
Makes perfect sense. Thanks very much.
Okay, council, any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, and again, point of concern, so now I will read it all, and then we will vote. So, the official, it's COAR 2023-09, moved by Councillor Yem, seconded by Councillor Foote. This is application C 2023-02. The applicant is Murray and Sharon Becker. Decision, the consent application proposes to sever one new lot from the subject lands for rural residential use. The Township of Nipissing Committee of Adjustment approved consent application 2023-02 by providing provisional consent subject to the following conditions. And the conditions are, as were mentioned, that the applicant provide the township with a copy of the reference plan to be deposited in the land registry office that is substantially in compliance with the application sketch. B, the original executed transfers, deeds, both duplicate originals, and one copy per consent. C, a schedule describing both the retained and severed lots and naming the applicable grantor and grantee attached to the transfers for approval purposes. D, written confirmation from the North Bay Mattawa Conservation Authority to demonstrate that there is a sufficient and potable water supply and to permit the installation of an adequate means of sewage disposal. E, entrance permit from the township for the severed lot. F, any traveled road situated on the severed or retained lot shall be transferred to the township for road purposes. Written confirmation that sufficient capacity exists for treatment capacity for hauled sewage to the satisfaction of the township. H, obtain approval of a zoning bylaw amendment application to protect the fish habitat and associated adjacent lands. And J, a certificate in the appropriate form prescribed in OREG 19796, Schedule 1, for signature of the Township of Nipissing Committee of Adjustment, official, secretary, treasurer, or chairperson. Are there any comments or questions before we move on? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so as far as the Committee of Adjustment goes, that is the only consent application for tonight. So we move on to adjournment. Mover and seconder. Gotcha. Moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Butt. I'll read it. It's number COAR 2023-10. Moved by Councillor Kirky, seconded by Councillor Butler, that the Committee of Adjustment meeting be adjourned at 6:11 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.